We arrived at our last panel after hearing the whole day about how the situation is pretty grim. At least this is what I was preaching. But around me are people that actually have constructive proposals for how we can move forward, even if the situation is not very good. And basically, what each of them is going to say is give his in very short, in a 5-minute statement. Will give his points or his or hers points and proposals for the Prime Minister, for Mr. Netanyahu, what he could do to make things better. And we will start with you, Israela.
Thank you. Although you didn't attend the last session that we discussed the feminine point of view of peacemaking, you are influenced by this. Okay. Now I'm going to pretend that I'm the Prime Minister of Israel. Just pretend. And so what am I going to do with regard to the issues that we were discussing all day long? First of all, I would like to announce that I am ready to take risks. Since I already took risks in making war, there is no reason for me not to take risks in making peace. And believe me, the result will be better. The other thing is that I am ready to cooperate with many governments in the area, and not only to act as if I'm alone in the universe. Okay, so basically I'm going to announce now that I accept the Arab Peace Initiative, and I can see what will be the advantage for the region and for the Middle East if the major players will cooperate with regard to security, which is the name of the conference, by the way, and we have a lot in common, and we have a lot of common interest, and I'm sure that after I will accept the Arab Peace Initiative, it will be easier for us to cooperate on this issue. The other things that I will do, by the way, the Arab Peace Initiative, I realize that this is the best thing that happened to Israel since the establishment of Israel in 1948. The other thing is that I announce that I am ready to accept and to recognize the state of Palestine on the basis of 67 borders with swap, and I would like to participate in the UN resolution that will acknowledge the state of Palestine. And the reason that I want to participate, because if I will participate and cooperate with this, maybe this resolution will be less damaging for Israel, so this is the reason for me to do it. But this is not the only reason, because this resolution will be the TOR, terms of reference, for the future negotiations that I'm going to resume with the Palestinians. And in this negotiation, I will do it according to a new roadmap, which will include, in parts of it, a removal of settlements in certain parts of Israel in the first steps, and then other steps that I don't have time to go into more details. And this is my final announcement will be, if I will not be successful in those steps, and I will not have a Palestinian partner that will work with me on this, and I will not have any partner that will cooperate with this plan, I will need to make sure that Israel will have borders. And it means that I will do unilateral steps that will ensure the existence of the state of Israel by withdrawal from the West Bank and by ensuring Israel's existence with appropriate security measures. Thank you very much.
Well, and now we wake up and move to you, Matti.
You can be only the deputy of the Prime Minister.
Yes. So first of all, I have nothing to add to what you said. Okay, but I would ask Netanyahu, do you want to deal with the matches, or do you want to deal with the explosive barrel? Dealing with the matches would only delay the explosion of the barrel. So now, I think that an achievement that you are not ready to recognize is not an achievement, is missing out. Israel, until now, and I'm not talking about singles like Israela or me, Israel has until now rejected in a formal resolution. I'm talking about its reaction to the roadmap in 2003. The Sharon government rejected whatsoever, and they were very insisting on the Saudi plan and the Arab Peace Initiative. And you know there is some difference between the Saudi plan and the Arab Peace Initiative, because the Saudi plan does not refer to the refugee problem at all. But Israel was very, very insistent on it. Now, I think that this is the great achievement of the policy of Israel, the military of Israel, but an achievement that you are not ready to recognize is falling apart. Now, how do I know that it is a great achievement? Not because I'm looking at the text, but I'm looking at the views of all the spoilers, beginning with Hamas, Jihad al-Islami, Global Jihad, Iran, Hezbollah, and so on and so forth. And what they are saying about the Arab Peace Initiative. And you know what? You know, the late Gaddafi. Let me bring the late Gaddafi testimony. In the Arab Peace Initiative version of 2009-2010, Gaddafi insisted to add to it a remark. And what was the remark? The remark was that Libya rejects the Arab Peace Initiative out of 3 reasons. 1, because it locks the door for the massive return to the state of Israel. It locks the door for establishing the baby of Gaddafi, which is one state, Israel. You remember, it was his baby, unitary state. And third one, it doesn't refer to the nuclear capability of Israel. Do you figure out what are the advantages of Israel from the Arab Peace Initiative? And it was enshrined, it is written, look at the website of the Arab League in 2009 and 2010, and you will see a remark. And the Arab states were ready to insert it into the text as a remark in order to show the interpretation of the right interpretation of the Arab Peace Initiative. So, what do you want? What do we want? I'm talking about us as Israelis. What do we want? Do we want to buy the car or not buy the car? But it is more than a matter of car or an acquisition of an instrument. If you don't buy the car, you are doomed to one space and one state. It means the obliteration of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. Now, what I'm for, I mean practically, in one sentence, a phased implementation of the Arab Peace Initiative. And it can include unilateral steps provided it is drawn deductively from the overall scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Matti. So, Nimrod, we're moving on to you. We heard from our last two speakers. Both of them spoke about that their advice to the Prime Minister, their first advice is to accept the Arab Peace Initiative. Is your advice is the same?
It's somewhere among the list. But as Israel needs a secure future, and a secure future depends on having good international standing and effective foreign policy, and as Israel's current foreign policy is not really working, and as Israel needs a new foreign policy, at the Mitvim Institute we've been working to develop a paradigm which can serve as guiding principles for a progressive Israeli foreign policy, which can lead us to the secure future that we are looking at. And it has four main pillars, which I will very briefly touch upon. And the first one is a pro-peace foreign policy, a foreign policy that understands that peace is an Israeli interest, and the two-state solution, although being difficult to implement, is the desired solution and is still feasible. And in order to make that happen, Israel should not reject international efforts to try and promote such a solution, but rather find a way to be part of the conversation within the international community to promote it, whether it's through discussion about recognition of a Palestinian state, about parameters, about different processes that can lead to such a solution, or conferences, or through mechanisms that need to promote it. This whole group of things that are being dealt with, Israel should be part of. And on top of that, Israel should also make an effort to renew the civil society cooperation with the Palestinians, which is definitely under a lot of difficulties these days, but is very much missing from our public sphere. Israel also needs a multi-regional foreign policy, one that acknowledges Israel's positioning within the juncture of three different international settings, the Mediterranean, the European Union, and the Middle East. It needs to acknowledge the interconnection between those. It needs to adopt much more integration attempts into them, and finally thinking on where Israel wants to be fit into each of those. By doing so, Israel should acknowledge the international incentive for peace provided by regional actors, whether it's the Arab Peace Initiative, whether it's the European Union offer to upgrade the ties, and develop specific relations with key countries in the region, including, by the way, Turkey. The third pillar is a more internationalist foreign policy. Israel should not always be a country dwelling alone. Israel should be less confrontational with the international community and more interacting with it and engaging with that. It needs to be playing a much more significant role on developing and promoting issues that are not necessarily linked to its immediate interest. Foreign aid, global agendas, humanitarian assistance, including to refugees from Syria. These are all issues that Israel's foreign policy should be taking part of, except for building relations with all kinds of new international actors rising on the global agenda. And finally, Israel needs a much more inclusive foreign policy, because foreign policy is not anymore an issue only for diplomats and embassies. It becomes an issue for NGOs, for individuals, for entrepreneurs, for businesses, and that gives a role to broader sectors of the societies to play a role in the conversation. And in Israel, it's not exactly the same way until now, because many groups are feeling excluded or being kicked out of the process in a way, or do not feel that they're empowered enough to make a change. and Israel should have a much more inclusive debate on that, including the Palestinian citizens of Israel that are often delegitimized from taking part in conversation on foreign policy issues. So if these 4 pillars are being implemented, I think Israel will have not only a secure future, but one of peace, one of prosperity, one of equality, and quite a better one than what it lies ahead now.
You still have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to follow up on what you said. But let's try and dive a bit deeper. Okay, I want to remind you that the prime minister you're advising, as any prime minister, is a politician. Okay, this analysis is great, but now I ask you, give me what does it mean practically? Okay, practically, give me 2 things that, let's say, there are elections tomorrow. 2 things that you'll tell the new prime minister, those things you should do in your first month in office.
So Israel should work with the international community to carve parameters for the 2-state solution. It should support such a resolution at the United Nations Security Council. It should accept the Arab Peace Initiative and respond favorably to the EU offer. It should significantly increase its external aid given to global agendas, and it should involve or invite Palestinian citizens of Israel to become part of decision-making process, including the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee in the Knesset.
Thank you, Nimrod. And now we'll move to you, Aziz. Give us your 5 pennies to the Prime Minister.
A whole 5 pennies. Okay. Well, I was told to prepare if I were the Prime Minister, which got me excited. You know, Palestinian being the Prime Minister of Israel means we either turned into a binational
Aziz,
state.
give it a few years, you'll be a great candidate, no worry.
I'll need to get a citizenship first, and
we'll take care of it. We'll take care of it.
But that would be interesting. So that's actually what I thought of. If I was the Prime Minister, or if I was advising the Prime Minister, either one, if I'm the Prime Minister, then unlike my predecessor, Mr. Netanyahu, I would say there's a big problem in the way we perceive ourselves. It's a big problem of the narrative we are living in. So all these suggestions we heard are great, and I don't want to go over them. I totally support it. End of the occupation, accepting their initiative. All of these are important. But I think the more even important thing and the hardest thing to start with is the narrative that exists in Israel today. Bibi Netanyahu in the last few months have made a few statements that are important. One of them is he said, I'm asked if we will live by the sword. And I say, yes, we will. So unlike Bibi, I think that's where we start, is taking something from the book of Isaiah. Sorry, I'm quoting the Bible again. But somebody in this Jewish panel has to quote the Bible. In the book of Isaiah, it talks about that they will hammer their sword into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nations will not lift up sword against nations, and they will never again learn war. These are the words of Prophet Isaiah, and you can choose which direction you want to go. And for some reason, the narrative that Israel has been living by is a narrative of living by the sword, is a narrative of power, is a narrative of security. When Israel asks for aid from the United States or from Europe or from anybody, it's aid for military. It's not aid to build schools. It's not aid to help the poor. It's not aid to build a better community. It's only aid to build weapons. And if you only build your community and that kind of security and that kind of mindset, you will not be able to have peace, because you live by this mentality of besiegement, narrative of besiegement. The community is traumatized. Both Israelis and Palestinians are traumatized. And we have to accept that and understand that. And that's why Mr. Netanyahu is able to convince people to vote for him. He knows that if you process your trauma as a narrative of victim, regardless of how strong you are, regardless of how powerful you are, they will always vote out of fear. The only way to change that is to start reshaping the narrative we live in. And we continue to fall into Bibi's kind of game. He brings us into his own narrative, and we're playing within his own narrative. Instead, we have to reshape the narrative. We have to start processing our trauma as both communities, Israelis and Palestinians, not as victims, but rather as survivors. And only then we are able to really make a difference, because it's not only the government we need to change, it's the people that we need to change. It's the people that end up voting for these politicians that we are talking about. You're seeing a big shift even on the left and the center now, more toward the right in the last year or two, because they want to get the voters. We are moving toward that narrative instead of reshaping and creating a different narrative. That's not, we are under attack, we are victims, people hate us. I think Israel needs to, for once, eventually understand that it can either be part of Europe and America and all of that, or really accept that it's part of the Middle East. And by that, I don't mean being undemocratic like some of the Middle Eastern countries, but really understand that that's the future of Israel. You need to understand that this is where we are. Build relationship, reach out to these countries, not building all its economy and all its thinking and all its alliances with only Western countries. I think, unfortunately, it will take some time, but it will happen only when we start thinking of people changing, not only government changing. Thank you.
I want to follow up on what you said and the narrative and everything, and ask you a question, and then I know I maybe should have asked you this in advance, but it will be interesting. Let's say that now you're the advisor to the Palestinian president, okay? What are the two steps you tell him? Let's say there's a new Palestinian president. What are the two steps you tell him, this is what you should do in your first month in office?
I think there are some similarities between the two situations. I think the Palestinians have to move into that direction as well. The Palestinian president will have to be honest and open with the people of his limitations, because at the moment, the Palestinian president doesn't have much. I would say continuing the Palestinian Authority as it is a big mistake. You are delegitimizing yourself, because all you're doing is being a security agency for Israel. And some of my friends who work in the Palestinian Authority know this and understand it, and it's a big trouble. I would say you have to rethink that. Not the security coordination. I mean, rethink our whole strategy. Is creating a Palestinian Authority that is not leading toward the state something we benefit from? Or is collapsing this authority and go back to popular resistance that is not violent, that is much more similar to the first Intifada, a better route? I think that's where we should go. If we continue as a Palestinian Authority as it is, that is not going to lead us to anything, and it will not change the situation, because it's comfortable. It is sustainable. Despite everything we heard, I think it is sustainable for Israel to have a Palestinian Authority, runs the affairs of the Palestinians, paid by donors from Europe and America and so on that foot the bill. That is sustainable for a long time, maybe not forever, but for a long time. You have to stop that and get Israel back to being responsible. Either make a decision. You're going to either give the Palestinians a state, or we're not going to do your dirty business here.
Well, just before we move to Anat, I just want to tell you, I have never met a politician that will basically say, you know what, I fire myself.
If they don't do it, eventually somebody will fire them.
Okay, thanks, Aziz. Anat, let's hear your recommendations for the Israeli Prime Minister.
Okay, I'll try, but actually, Aziz, you took everything I wanted to know, just part of what I wanted to say. So I'll be bringing a different quote. I apologize, it's not from the Quran. It's but I do want to say something before I give my point of view. I think that in this conference, a lot of very interesting and maybe even exciting ideas were raised and discussed about resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and then we sort of bypassed the question of how to actually get into power and be able to implement these wonderful ideas. And now we're all prime ministers, and we're talking about how to realize. I think maybe you need an additional conference just to talk about this issue, because this is it's not a joke. It's the real challenge. Changing reality, it's not enough to know what needs to be done. It's how to actually do it. So I'm no expert, and I think that we heard a lot of very knowledgeable people today, and I don't really have a very detailed policy proposal. I think that what lies in the basis of good leadership is to be able to offer your people or your citizens hope and the belief that the future can be good and that it can be better and that it can be different than what it is today. And for this, there needs to be a change, as Aziz was saying, in the discourse and in the terminology used and not just the policy. And I want to quote, not the Bible, but the Canadian Prime Minister, who just recently, yeah, I know it sounds funny, but he just recently, referring to Donald Trump and the primaries, the primary elections in the United States, he said, if we allow politicians to succeed by scaring people, we don't actually end up any better. Fear doesn't make us safer, it makes us weaker. And this obviously applies very well to the Israeli-Palestinian reality and any reality, really. He also talks a lot about the importance of diversity. And in Israel, we invest so much resources in war, in military, in defending ourselves and fortifying ourselves. And I see it from, where I live. I see the walls being built and the military technology being, placed in our fields. It doesn't make us feel any safer. It just makes us feel weaker. It makes us feel like we're under imminent threat. So it's not working. It's not improving our lives, and it doesn't make us feel like we have a viable, sustainable future. And this needs to be changed. And if the same amount of resources invested in war would be invested in actually taking all these, good, wonderful, creative ideas about, negotiations, what needs to be done, and are actually put or realized or invested in, then I'm sure we would be in a very different place. But just one last thing. This is a security conference, so we focused mostly on security in like the traditional terms. But I think Israel's security also lies in internal cohesion. And the Israeli society is disintegrating. It's very much divided. It's very polarized. Obviously, it has a lot to do with the conflict, but not just. And any prime minister, which is obviously not this prime minister we have right now, should and must promote a policy of equality, of diversity, for Israel to ever, prosper. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Anat. As a cynical journalist that is dealing with politicians, I want to now get us all back to earth, okay, and back to reality, and try to make another round with the question of something that is very real right now, and this is the future of the Palestinian Authority. I don't know how many of you heard, but a very prominent minister in the Israeli government gave a speech last week and basically said that he gave this analysis, without saying if he's for it or against it. He just gave an analysis that I thought was a very reasonable one, that sooner rather than later, the PA can collapse with all of the consequences. Yeah, Minister Elkin, Zev Elkin. And now I want to do another round, especially after what you said, Aziz, and to ask each of you, what would you say to the Prime Minister or to the President of Palestine, okay, right now, what they should do about it? Okay, what's the two things they should do about it right now, about this question of the future of the Palestinian Authority. Israela. Just try to be very, very brief because there are like 15 or 20 minutes.
And I'm now, again, the Prime Minister of Israel, and I say to President Abbas, please don't collapse. Why? Because this is a major interest of the State of Israel. The Palestinian Authority will continue to function in an effective way because of three main reasons. The first two one are obvious. First of all, just imagine the economical burden on Israel if the Palestinian Authority will collapse. You asked me to be short. Okay, Rega.
You beg to the Palestinians not to collapse. What does he care about the economic burden on Israel? He's not in charge of...
Okay, and then, no, I'm now representing the Prime Minister of Israel. And then the security price that Israel will have to pay to protect all the settlements in the West Bank and to maintain security with the absence of any security forces, Palestinian security forces. And then a few weeks ago, maybe months ago, Mahmoud Abbas, this is an answer to your question, he was very proud to announce that the establishment of the Palestinian Authority is one of the biggest achievements of the Palestinians. And I believe it's true, because it was the first step for an independent Palestinian state. If you go back from here, I don't know when will be the next time that Palestinians will have a country of their own. And by the way, I'm still the Prime Minister of Israel. An establishment of a Palestinian state is a very important and essential interest of the State of Israel. Thank you very much.
Matti, I'm turning to you again. Right now, okay, there's and again, I want to try and focus the question even more, okay, and to be very open and honest, Mr. Abbas is 81 years old, okay, and he's not the healthiest person around, okay. He can, tomorrow he can, not wake up in the morning, and then who knows what's going to happen, okay, and it's not something that he would do. He just, sometimes people die. Okay. No, I'm very open here. That we have to face reality.
But then you are very young. It's very.
So, Matti, what do you tell the Prime Minister to do? Two things to do tomorrow. Okay, about this issue of a possible collapse of the PA.
First of all, I want to meet the challenge of Aziz by quoting from a verse from the Quran. In Arabic, first of all. إذا جنحوا للسلم فاجنح لها. If they are leaning toward peace, lean to them. Okay, what I will do, first of all, I will tell the Prime Minister, look, you say that you are not leading, you don't want a binational state or a binational situation. You are leading to it. You are doing very bravely. Because in the absence of two-state solution, you will lead to one space, one state solution. So what do you want? What do you want? Again, answer to me. What do you want? I will ask the question. Do you want a binational situation? Do you want a Jewish democratic state? Because in due time, of course, the Palestinian Authority, the PA, will not serve Israel as an agent for the security coordination or for the burden of the population in the West Bank. It's a matter of time.
Then the Prime Minister will tell you, Matti, I understand the big picture, but now tell me, maybe tomorrow the PA will collapse. What should I do?
It does. First of all, the fact that Abu Mazen is getting older and older is not the main question or the main issue. The main issue is to go for two-state solution. And what he has to do, again, I will return to my earlier answer, to be ready to talk with the Sunni world, including the Palestinians, about the basic clauses of the Arab Peace Initiative.
Matti,
based on
what
it.
Arab Peace Initiative? Again, if tomorrow the PA collapses, what will the Arab Peace Initiative, how will it help us?
It will save, I will tell you.
The Prime Minister will fire you, Matti. He asks you, Matti, please, you advised chiefs of Shin Bet, now advise me, please, give me two advices, what should I do on an operational level if the PA collapses tomorrow?
First of all, he already fired me. Okay. Not he, but no, not directly, but indirectly. Okay. But
Bibi has a tendency to recycle people,
you,
so we can.
I would sacrifice my professional mind, let us say, and tell him, look, if you say the words, I am ready to talk on the basis of the Arab Peace Initiative, I guarantee to you, and I give you my head, yes, I'm ready to be beheaded, yes.
In Saudi Arabia.
That it will create a formative change, transformation, not only among the Palestinians, but among the Saudi state. This is my evaluation.
Okay, thank you, Matti. Nimrod, now you're sitting at the Prime Minister's room. He tells you, "Listen, I just got a very disturbing intelligence report that tells me that the PA might collapse in a week. What should I do?" Two things.
First is reverse the language about the President of the Palestinian Authority. I think over the last years we see constant bashing of Abbas, the claims of diplomatic terror, of whatever they do going against him, trying to demonize. I think that should be totally flipped. If this is our partner for peace, he should be empowered. We should show that this is the partner. We should recognize the bold step that he took along the years. We should recognize his history in the peace process, which is not 5 or 10 years, it goes much longer. And we should try and build him as a partner, a more powerful partner for our. The second issue, I think Israel should state that it supports Palestinian reunification. Without reunifying the West Bank and the Gaza, there cannot be a two-state solution agreement being signed. And Israel should ask its allies in the West, in Europe, and in the US to play a more active role in promoting such unification, including engaging with the two different actors, Fatah and Hamas.
So now I'll make your life even harder. A week passed, okay, and then Abu Mazen went to sleep in the evening and didn't wake up in the morning. The Prime Minister calls you again to his office and tells you, "Listen, I tried to change the discourse about Abu Mazen, but he's not there anymore. So what should I do now?" Two things.
So Israel should facilitate the process of change. And we hear a lot about what happens to regional partners when their leaders go away. And we heard it in Egypt before Barak went, and we heard it in Syria, and we heard a lot. When such a process, which is a domestic internal process, happens, Israel should let the process go on, not try to dictate it. Let other actors in the region, in the world that will definitely try to dictate it, do their job, and let the Palestinian society decide for itself, and then work with whoever becomes the leader of the Palestinian Authority.
Okay, Aziz, to you. You're also called into the Prime Minister's office, and he tells you, "Listen, Abu Mazen is gone. What should I do now?" Two things.
And one day, Bibi likes me suddenly. I agree a lot with Nimrod. I think Israel has a lot to do if it wants the Palestinian Authority not to collapse. Earlier, Ashraf was saying it is, and you've done that in interviews, so I'm not setting you in any trouble. It really is not for a long time, but at least for a while in Israel, hands to strengthen or to weaken the Palestinian Authority. And as Nimrod said, in the last couple of years, it's been weakening it in many ways. It's not only the language, it's also finances, when you're not allowing the tax money to go to pay to the police officers who are protecting actually the settlement. And, this whole thing makes no sense. So you want them to do their job. Whenever there's an attack, you're saying, well, the Palestinian Authority isn't doing its job to protect us, but in the same time, you will not allow the tax money to go, it is Palestinian money. It is taxes from Palestinians to go back to the Palestinians so they can pay the police officers who are supposed to do that. So that's one of the things that quickly Israel could do. Give people hope of the process. The whole reason the Palestinian Authority exists is that there is a process to end the occupation. It was supposed to only exist for 5 years until there is a final settlement. This 5 years ended up lasting for the last 3 years or so. So we need to give people a reason, restart the process, restart the whole talk, give people hope that there is a settlement that can be seen in the future. Now, if the Palestinian Authority collapses, I think we are in a pretty bad situation. The only way that we can deal with that is a very quick process of elections. There will be some struggle within certain people in the higher level of the Palestinian Authority because there is no clear winner of who's going to be the successor. There is a potential of Marwan Barghouti, but I don't know if the Israeli government would be willing to release him, and this is something Elkin talked about.
Would this be something that you would recommend to the Israeli Prime Minister? Let's say, again, Abu Mazen's dead, God rest his soul, and Prime Minister calls you in and tells you, should I release Barghouti or not? Would it promote anything? Would it do anything to better the situation?
So I have no stand whether I support Barghouti or not, but I think in the long run, he is somebody who is seen by many Palestinians as a potential leader, and I think he will have a lot of strength if he's released. But if at the end of the day, you're not planning to have a process of negotiations that will lead to the end of the conflict, then whether you release Barghouti or not is irrelevant. It's about who do we want to have an agreement, and then we will find the right. I think even outside Barghouti, there are people today in the Palestinian Authority who are willing to do a deal. Not only Abbas, some of the people who also working with him. The question is, how much is that possible? You need to give them also some legitimization, and that is not happening at the moment.
And if right now, again, we'll go back and I'll tell you, no, now you're switching jobs, now you're advising the PLO, let's say, and a day after Abu Mazen is dead. What do you tell them to do? To keep to try and maintain the Palestinian Authority, or to say, you know what, let's just let Israel to go back and give us control the educational system, the hospitals, the sewage, the garbage, everything.
We heard earlier that everything about collapse in the Palestinian Authority would be problematic to Israel. So that's a negotiation point for Palestinians. I think pressuring Israel by saying, look, we're not sure we really want to keep this. There's no reason to keep it. At the moment, we're keeping it for your benefit mostly, is a very strong negotiation point. And I would say, like in any diplomacy, use it. Doesn't mean you have to actually do it, but yeah, go with it and see how far you can go. There's no reason to be a king over nothing. I mean, the Palestinian president need permits to come in and out of the West Bank. It is, the word president is almost like a joke, and I think he knows it as much as other Palestinians. So I would say...
You know what Arik Sharon used to say? Arik Sharon used to say that being the Prime Minister of Israel is really one of the toughest and least rewarding job there is, but still people line up. And, I think that it's in every country or political entity, people will line up.
Here's a difference. And you mentioned earlier that there are problems within the Palestinian side today and the issue of democracy and elections. And there is a movement among Palestinians saying this is not acceptable. We're not going to accept this forever. So the leadership of the Palestinian side can push for a year, for 2, for 5 to continue in place and hoping to have a process that will work with the Palestinian with the Israelis. But at the end of the day, I think the Palestinian Authority will not be able to sustain itself only because people eventually will not allow it to continue the way it is. And we're seeing a rising number of people who are within the Palestinian side protesting the authority because they're not seeing where is this going. And I think that's where the danger, it's not only Israel strengthening it or weakening it, it's not only these politicians who will line up. And if Sharon thought that Israel prime minister is not a rewarding job, trust me, the Palestinian prime minister is not that great of a job, but the people eventually, I think, will not allow it to continue.
Okay, Anat, and now we're going to you, the same drill.
I'm going to have to pass because I don't presume to be an expert on Palestinian politics, so I can take another question or...
So let me ask you this, okay?
And plus, I don't want you to kill Abbas again.
No, it's
I think
okay.
you killed him for like 10 times.
It's just metaphorically speaking here.
Of course.
But let's ask you something that is more physically closer to you. The prime minister calls you into his room, tells you, listen. The head of the military intelligence just said that if we don't do anything in Gaza, things will explode in our face in a very short time.
Theoretical.
Yeah, not a theoretical scenario.
It just happened.
What are the 2 or 3 things you tell the prime minister, this is what you do now?
Oh, so again, Nimrod and I were talking about it this morning, I think. I'm not to not answer the question, but I think there are better people than me to talk about policy and specifically about Gaza. But I think it was mentioned here, I think in the morning, that if we don't do anything quickly, the window of opportunity is closing very, very fast. Aziz was talking about it. And Gaza is going to explode in my face, or in our face. And this without mentioning the terrible humanitarian situation in Gaza, and there's close to 2 million people living there in unlivable conditions. But I would love, sorry, I don't want to take your place, Barak, but I think Nimrod maybe can answer.
I can give a word. I think supporting Gaza's humanitarian situation, but refraining from doing so in a way that jeopardizes the two-state solution is the real challenge. Because we saw in the past attempts to do the other way around.
But again, Nimrod, you're dodging the question, okay? There's no, now we need to do something, okay? You need to, you were hired in order to give advice to the prime minister, not to tell him, we need to not jeopardize this. No, what should we do? Be practical.
So no, you give the humanitarian...
The one thing.
I will say it too. You give the humanitarian aid in order to prevent humanitarian catastrophe.
But today we give humanitarian aid.
So you give more, and you promote the negotiation between Hamas and Fatah in order to create this unified Palestinian leadership with which you can engage, because otherwise you consolidate the split and you jeopardize the two-state solution.
Thanks a lot. And
I would like to say one more thing, please, with your permission. And it's something to do with instant and immediate solution for conflicts and problems that are lasting for more than 100 years. There is no magic solution. And all our attempts to give one failed in the past and will fail in the future. It has to be a process with good intention. Thank you very much.
I want to again thank our panelists. I think we're exhausted, but I think it was very, very, very interesting, and it gave all of us much more food for thought and much more reason to do another conference here soon. Thank you all.